Hello, night wanderers, and welcome to Crowvane Manor, where old walls hold forgotten secrets and a calm voice guides you gently into sleep. Before tonight's stories begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Leave your city, state, or country in the comments below. It's always wonderful to see how far the stories of Crowvane Manor travel. Just a quick note before we enter the darkness. You may hear a few short ads during the first 10 minutes. After that, the rest of the video will be completely ad-free. No more interruptions. Just you, the quiet night, and the stories waiting inside the manor. Now, settle into bed, close your eyes, and let the worries of the day slowly fade away. If you enjoy peaceful nights filled with mystery, please like the video, subscribe to Crowvane Manor, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. The doors are open. Come inside and let tonight's journey begin. Last month, I finally took the trip to Japan that I had been putting off for years. I had wanted to go ever since graduating from college, but there was always some reason not to. Work was too busy. Money was tight. Someone needed me to cover a shift. I told myself I would go the following year, then the year after that. And eventually it became one of those plans I talked about more than I actually believed I would do. Then I got promoted. The promotion came with better pay, more responsibility, and unexpectedly, a couple of weeks away from work. My managers told me to use the time before I settled into the new position properly. Most people probably would have stayed home or gone somewhere nearby. I booked a flight to Japan. For the first several days, the trip was exactly what I had imagined. Crowded streets, train stations that seemed impossibly organized, convenience stores I could have spent hours inside, temples, museums, food I had only ever seen online. I took too many photographs and probably looked like every other tourist who had spent years romanticizing the country before finally arriving. Nothing strange happened. Nothing even slightly unsettling. That is important because I keep asking myself whether I am connecting two completely unrelated things simply because one happened before the other. Maybe I am. I hope I am. The only moment during the entire trip that felt wrong happened when I visited a shrine. I am deliberately not naming it. Partly because I don't know whether the location actually has anything to do with what is happening, and partly because I don't want anyone reading this to go there specifically because of this story. The shrine itself looked completely normal. There were other visitors, tourists taking photographs, locals walking quietly through the grounds. Nothing looked abandoned or forbidden. There were no creepy warning signs. Nobody told me not to enter. Nobody behaved as if anything unusual was happening. If I had taken photographs and shown them to you, you probably would have seen nothing except a beautiful old shrine surrounded by trees. But almost immediately after I entered the grounds, I felt uncomfortable. Not frightened exactly. At least not at first. It was more like the sensation you get when someone has been staring at you for too long. You haven't actually seen them. You can't point to where they are. But some part of you has noticed the attention. I kept looking behind me. Nobody. Then I'd walk another 20 or 30 feet and feel it again. Watched, that is still the best word I have. I tried ignoring it. I reminded myself that I was a tourist in an unfamiliar place. Maybe I was simply overwhelmed. Maybe there were customs I didn't understand, and I was subconsciously worried about doing something disrespectful. I became unusually aware of everyone around me. An elderly woman walking near one of the buildings. A couple taking photographs. A man standing beneath a tree. A group of students laughing quietly. Every time I turned, I expected to catch someone staring directly at me. Nobody was. The feeling became stronger anyway. Eventually, it stopped feeling like someone was watching me. It felt like someone was following me. I know those two sensations sound almost identical, but they aren't. Being watched feels stationary. Following has direction. Whenever I moved, the sensation moved too. If I stopped, it seemed to stop. I even changed direction a few times just to test myself. Turn left. Wait, walk back toward where I'd come from. The feeling remained. I started getting embarrassed. I was standing in the middle of a public shrine behaving like a paranoid idiot, so I forced myself to keep exploring. I looked around one of the smaller structures, bought something from a nearby shop, took photographs, tried to enjoy the experience. But the longer I stayed, the worse it became. At one point, I heard something move in the trees behind me, a quick rustling sound. I turned immediately. Nothing, there were leaves moving slightly, but there was a breeze. Perfectly normal. Then I saw something white disappear behind one of the trees. Just a flash. So quick that I wasn't even sure I had seen it. Could have been someone's clothing. Could have been sunlight. Could have been a bird. I didn't investigate. I had already spent enough time convincing myself not to be ridiculous. Instead, I left, earlier than I had planned. The moment I moved far enough away from the shrine grounds, the pressure seemed to lift. Not instantly, but noticeably. By the time I reached a busier street, I almost laughed at myself. Too many ghost stories, I thought. Too many horror movies. Maybe jet lag. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe the atmosphere of the place had simply affected me. The rest of my vacation was normal. Completely normal. I visited more tourist locations. Ate too much. Bought gifts. Walked so much my feet hurt every night. I didn't feel watched again. I didn't see any more flashes of white. Nothing followed me back to the hotel. There were no nightmares. No scratches on the walls. No mysterious figures standing outside my room. By the time my flight home arrived, I had nearly forgotten about the shrine. The journey back was uneventful. Airports, flights, luggage, exhaustion, normal. I got home, slept badly because of the time difference, and started preparing for work again. My new position officially began a few days later. For the first couple of days, everything was fine. Busy, but fine. The promotion had given me more responsibility than I was used to, so I was definitely stressed. There were new expectations, more meetings, and people constantly asking questions that I was now apparently supposed to know how to answer. That probably matters. My family certainly thinks it does. According to them, everything I am experiencing can be explained by stress. Maybe they are right. The first strange thing happened in the middle of the night. I don't know the exact time. Somewhere around 2 or 3. I woke suddenly. Not because of a nightmare. Not because of a loud noise. I just opened my eyes. For a few seconds, I lay there confused. The room was dark. Everything looked normal. Then something white moved past the bedroom doorway. Fast, a flash. Exactly like what I thought I'd seen near the shrine. I sat up immediately. Hello? Nothing. I listened. The house was silent. I got out of bed and turned on the hallway light. Nothing there. I checked the bathroom, kitchen, living room. Nobody. Every door was locked. Every window was closed. I told myself I'd seen light from a passing car. That explanation worked until I remembered the angle of my bedroom doorway. Headlights from the road shouldn't have been able to create a moving flash in that particular spot. Still, houses reflect light strangely. I went back to bed. Then, I heard scratching at the front door. Scratch, pause, scratch. I froze. At first, I thought it was a branch. Then I remembered there aren't any branches close enough to touch the door. The scratching came again. 3 quick movements, like claws. I grabbed my phone and turned on the camera before walking toward the front of the house. I didn't open the door. I'm not that stupid. Instead, I looked through the peephole. Nothing. Porch empty. The scratching stopped. I waited. 30 seconds, maybe longer. Then it started again. This time lower, near the bottom of the door. That made me think animal. Raccoon, cat, possum, something like that. I hit the door once with my palm. Go. The scratching stopped immediately. I waited. Nothing. Eventually, I went back to bed. The next morning, I checked the door. No obvious marks. No muddy paw prints. No hair. Nothing. I would have forgotten about it if something else hadn't happened at work. During lunch, I mentioned the noise casually. I wasn't telling a ghost story. I was complaining. I think some animal was scratching at my door last night. One of my coworkers looked at me. What time? I shrugged. 2, maybe 3. Her expression changed. She glanced toward another person sitting near us. He looked back. What? I asked. She hesitated. Then said, I heard scratching last night too. I laughed. Okay, no, seriously, at your house? Yeah. The other coworker joined in. I didn't hear scratching. He looked uncomfortable. But I saw something. My smile disappeared. What? White. He waved one hand quickly through the air, like something went past my kitchen window. I stared at him. He lived nowhere near me, different part of town. The woman didn't live close to either of us. For several seconds, nobody said anything. Then someone made the obvious joke. Great, you've brought back a Japanese ghost. Everyone laughed, including me. But I didn't find it funny. That night, I searched online. Of course I did. That was probably a mistake. If you search long enough for supernatural explanations, the internet will happily provide them. Spirits, yokai, curses, shrine guardians, ghosts that follow travelers, entities attached to objects, punishment for disrespect. I found so many contradictory explanations that they became useless. I hadn't knowingly done anything disrespectful at the shrine. I hadn't stolen anything. I hadn't broken anything. I hadn't entered a restricted area, at least not knowingly. I hadn't even bought some strange antique that could supposedly carry a curse. Nothing, so I decided to treat it like an animal problem. I ordered motion-activated cameras, several. One covering the front door, one watching the side of the house, another facing the backyard. I also moved a knife onto my nightstand. I know a knife wouldn't help against a ghost. I wasn't thinking ghost. Not completely. I still thought there could be someone coming onto my property. Or an animal. Or both. The cameras arrived quickly. I installed them. For the first night, nothing happened. Second night, nothing. Third night, at 2:17 a.m., my phone sent an alert. Motion detected. I was already awake because I'd been sleeping badly. I opened the feed. The camera showed the front porch, empty, then something white crossed the frame. Not walked. Crossed, a bright pale blur moved from left to right so quickly that the camera barely captured it. I replayed the clip. Again, the shape was too fast to understand. Could have been a moth close to the lens. That is the explanation I prefer. In night vision, insects can look enormous. I've seen those videos. A tiny bug becomes a bright, floating shape. Fine, except a few seconds after the white blur disappeared, the audio picked up scratching. Scratch, scratch, scratch from the front door. I sat in bed, listening. The actual sound came through the house at almost the exact same time as the camera recording. I grabbed the knife. I still didn't open the door. I watched through the live feed. Nothing. Then another alert came from the backyard camera. I switched feeds. White flash. Gone. Front door. Backyard almost instantly. That would require an animal to run around the house incredibly quickly. Possible, still possible. Then the side camera triggered. White, gone, I stopped thinking raccoon. The scratching continued. I didn't sleep. By morning, I was exhausted. At work, people immediately noticed. One coworker asked if the animal had returned. I said yes. Then the woman who had heard scratching at her own house looked at me. So did mine. Another person overheard us. "What's scratching?" We explained. He looked pale. He had heard something outside his bedroom window. Another coworker said she'd woken up because she thought someone whispered in the hallway. That was when the atmosphere changed. People stopped joking. At first, I assumed coincidence. It had to be. Maybe weather. Maybe animals were more active because of the season. Maybe we were all talking about unrelated events and connecting them because humans like patterns. But over the following days, more people started reporting things. A white shape in a parking lot. Scratching outside an apartment. Movement in a mirror. Someone hearing footsteps in their kitchen. One woman swore she heard someone call her name from behind her while she was alone in the office bathroom. That one scared me, because these weren't random strangers online. These were people I knew. And the only thing all of them had in common was work. And me. I started noticing them looking at me differently. Not accusing exactly, but curious, suspicious. Whenever someone experienced something strange, eventually their eyes moved toward me. Because I had been the first person to mention it. Because I'd recently returned from another country. Because somebody had made that stupid joke about me bringing something back. The joke stopped being funny. One afternoon, a coworker asked, "Did anything weird happen while you were in Japan?" I said no too quickly. She noticed. "What?" I hesitated, then told them about the shrine. Not everything, just the feeling of being watched, the flash of white. The moment I said that, the room became quiet. "You saw white there too?" "Maybe. What do you mean, maybe? I don't know what I saw." That answer didn't satisfy anyone. One guy laughed nervously. "Well, thanks for bringing it to the office." I told him not to joke. He looked at me. I'm not. That hurt more than I expected. I went home angry. Angry at them. Angry at myself. Angry at whatever stupid coincidence had turned me into the center of this. That night, nothing happened until 3:06. Then, every camera triggered at once. Front, back, side, all 3 notifications appeared within the same second. I opened the front feed. White, the backyard feed. White, the side. White, same moment. That isn't possible for one animal. Maybe multiple insects hit the cameras simultaneously. Maybe a software issue. Maybe the cameras reacted to some change in lighting. I kept offering explanations because the alternative was ridiculous. Then the scratching started. Not at the front door. Inside, I heard it from the hallway wall. A slow, dragging sound, like fingernails moving across drywall. I sat up. The knife was already in my hand. Scratch had traveled along the wall, not inside the wall, across the surface, toward my bedroom. I turned on the bedside lamp. The sound stopped. I waited. Nothing, then something whispered. Very quietly. So quietly that I can't be certain what it said. At first, I thought it was just breath. Then I heard syllables. My name. I think it said my name. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Like someone standing outside the bedroom trying not to wake anybody else. I stayed completely still. Then another whisper. I couldn't understand that one. The voice sounded strange, not male or female, almost like multiple voices were trying to speak at the exact same time. I grabbed my phone and started recording. The whisper stopped. Of course, I checked the hallway. Empty, I barely slept. The next morning, I listened to the recording anyway. Mostly silence. Air conditioning. my own breathing. Then, near the end, there was something, a faint sound, not clear enough to call a voice, but not completely random either. I played it at work. That was a mistake. One coworker immediately said, "That's what I heard." Another agreed. Then someone asked me why I had recorded it. Because I wanted proof. Proof of what? I didn't answer. That afternoon, 3 people asked whether I had brought anything back from Japan. I told them no. Souvenirs, obviously, but normal things. Food, clothes, small gifts. Nothing from the shrine. Then I remembered something. At the shrine, I had taken photographs. A lot of them. That evening, I went through every photo from the trip. Most were normal. Buildings, trees, pathways, other tourists. Then I found one photograph I didn't remember taking. It was angled downward. Mostly gravel and the bottom of a wooden structure. Nothing special. Except there was something white near the edge of the frame. A piece of fabric. Maybe. I zoomed in. The image became blurry. Still, the shape seemed wrong. Too narrow to be a person. Too tall to be an animal. I zoomed farther. Pixels, nothing useful. Then I checked the timestamp. The photograph had been taken almost 10 minutes after I remembered leaving the shrine. I checked the photos before and after. The previous image was taken outside the main grounds. The next was at a convenience store blocks away. Yet somehow, between those two, my phone had taken a photograph back at the shrine. Maybe timestamps can be wrong. Maybe GPS data had lagged. I don't know. I deleted the photo, immediately regretted it, then restored it. I couldn't decide whether keeping it was dangerous or deleting it was worse. That's how irrational I'd become. I called my family. They were not helpful. My sister told me the promotion was stressing me out. My father said jet lag can last longer than people expect. My mother asked if I was sleeping enough. When I explained that my coworkers were hearing things too, they said people influence each other. And yes, I understand that. One person says they heard scratching and suddenly everyone notices every sound outside their house. Suggestion is powerful. Fear spreads. Maybe that's all this is. I tried accepting that explanation. Then my mother asked whether I could take a few days off work. That made me angry. I just got promoted. Exactly. You think I'm imagining this because I can't handle the job? I didn't say that. You basically did. We're saying you're exhausted. I hung up earlier than I should have. I apologized later. But they still don't believe me. And now I'm starting to question myself too. Maybe that's the worst part. If I saw something clearly standing in my hallway, at least I'd know. If the cameras captured a face, I'd know. Instead, I get flashes. Scratching. Whispers, things just unclear enough to doubt. Yesterday, something changed. I heard the whisper at work. Until then, every strange thing that happened directly to me had happened at home. I was in the office late. Most people had already left. I was finishing something at my desk when I heard a sound behind me. Very faint. I assumed another coworker was still around. I turned. Nobody. Then I heard it again. Close to my left ear. A whisper. This time I understood one word. Back, I spun around. Empty office. My heart started racing. Then one of the lights near the hallway flickered. A white shape crossed the glass door. I stood so quickly my chair rolled backward. I grabbed my phone. No idea who I planned to call. Security? Police? What would I say? There's a blurry white thing outside my office? I checked the hallway. Nothing. I packed up and left. On the drive home, I kept checking my rearview mirror. Every dark car behind me looked suspicious. Every reflection looked white for half a second. When I reached home, the front camera had recorded 8 motion events. Every clip showed the same thing. White flash. Gone, but here's what really scares me. The timestamps began before I left work. Whatever is triggering those cameras was at my house while I was still in the office. And I still heard something whisper to me there. That means either there is more than one, or it doesn't need to stay in one place. I don't know which possibility is worse. My coworkers are definitely suspicious now. This morning, nobody directly accused me of anything, but conversations stopped when I entered the break room. One person asked if I had plans to return to Japan. I said no. He responded, "Maybe you should." He tried smiling afterward. It didn't look like a joke. Another coworker asked if I could remember exactly what I did at the shrine. I've been going through the day repeatedly. I entered, walked around, took pictures, bought a small souvenir from somewhere nearby, but not from a restricted area. I didn't touch anything I wasn't supposed to. I didn't take stones, didn't take wood, didn't damage anything. I didn't perform any ritual, at least not knowingly, but there's one detail I keep remembering differently. There was a place where people were leaving things. Small offerings, coins. I remember standing near it. I remember looking down. Then my memory skips. Not dramatically, I just can't remember walking away. The next clear memory is being farther down the path with that feeling of being watched getting stronger. Maybe that's nothing. Vacations blur together. You don't remember every step. But I went through my pockets when I got home tonight. Not because I expected anything, just because I was desperate. In the bottom of an old backpack I had used during the trip, I found something. A coin. Japanese, at least I think it's Japanese. I had foreign coins left over, so that alone means nothing. But this one was wrapped in a tiny piece of white paper. I do not remember wrapping it. I don't remember picking it up. I don't remember putting it in that pocket. There is writing on the paper. Japanese characters. I tried using a translation app. The app keeps giving me different results. Return, go back. Send back. Something along those lines. I don't know whether the translation is even accurate. I put the coin and paper inside a container. The scratching started almost immediately, not outside, from the cabinet where I put it. Scratch, 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 I took it back out. The sound stopped. I am looking at it now. I don't know what to do. Throw it away? Burn the paper? Mail it back? Fly back to Japan and return it? What if it isn't even from the shrine? What if doing something dramatic makes this worse? The camera's just triggered again. All three. I haven't checked them yet. I can already hear scratching outside the front door. It is louder tonight. Slower, more deliberate. Before, it sounded like an animal trying to get inside. Now it sounds like someone scratching with one fingernail. Long movements from the top of the door downward. I have the knife beside me. I know how useless that sounds. But holding something feels better than holding nothing. There was another whisper a few minutes ago. Not outside. From the hallway. I think it said, "Bring it." That could mean the coin. Maybe, or maybe I'm hearing what I expect to hear now. I haven't told my family about the coin. I haven't told my coworkers either. They already think I brought something back. If they knew I found an object in my bag that I don't remember taking, I'm pretty sure at least some of them would blame me for everything happening to them. Maybe they would be right. I need help deciding what to do. Because whatever this is, it seems to be getting more confident. At first, it stayed outside. Then, the scratching came from inside the walls. Then I heard whispers. Then it followed me to work. Now it's using words I can understand. And the people around me are experiencing it too. That's the part that makes me think this isn't only stress. If I were the only person hearing things, I could accept that maybe I was losing my mind. But I'm not. Something happened after I came home from Japan. Something that started with me and now seems to be spreading outward. I keep thinking about how I felt at the shrine. Watched, then followed. Maybe I had it backward. Maybe something wasn't following me around the shrine. Maybe it was waiting to see whether I would take something. Maybe the moment I put that coin in my bag, intentionally or not, I gave it permission. Or maybe the coin means nothing. Maybe I've been searching so desperately for a connection that I'm building one out of unrelated details. I don't know anymore. The scratching just stopped. That should make me feel better. It doesn't, because my bedroom door is open. I can see part of the hallway from where I'm sitting. And there is something white standing at the far end. Not a flash this time. Not something captured badly by a camera. It is standing still. I can't see a face. It looks almost like a person covered in pale fabric, except the proportions aren't right. Too narrow, too tall. Its head is bent slightly to one side. I haven't moved. Neither has it. The coin is in my hand. The white paper around it feels warm. I can hear something whispering. Not from the hallway. From right beside my ear. It keeps saying the same thing. Back, I think I finally understand. Whatever followed me home doesn't want me. It wants something I brought with me. And I have a terrible feeling that simply giving it back isn't going to be as easy as putting a coin in the mail. I woke up one morning and found what looked like a dead horse lying on my property. At least, from a distance, I thought it was a dead horse. The moment I got close enough to really see it, I realized that wasn't true. It wasn't a horse anymore. It was the skin of one. And when I say skin, I don't mean a cleaned hide or a piece of leather someone had dumped there. This was almost the entire outer layer of a horse, lying flat against the ground. The legs stretched out like empty rubber tubes. The body had collapsed inward because there was nothing inside to give it shape. It looked less like something had butchered a horse and more like the animal had somehow stepped out of its own body, like a snake shedding its skin. Except snakes are supposed to do that. Horses aren't. The smell hit me when I got closer. There was the dry, sour smell of old sweat mixed with something strangely sweet and rotten. Beneath that was another odor I couldn't place, almost watery or chemical. The combination turned my stomach so badly that I had to stumble away and vomit into the grass. Judging by the fuzzy patches of mold and the dampness around parts of the skin, it had been decomposing for some time. That only created another question. How had I not noticed it before? I worked that property every day. Something that large should not have appeared without me seeing it. When I forced myself to look again, I noticed a brand on one of the hind legs. It was faint, but I recognized it. The horse had belonged to Aburn Ranch on the other side of the valley. The people living there kept mostly to themselves. They were country people, even more isolated than I was, and most of the family spoke very little English. That had never bothered me. We weren't exactly friends, but we had never had problems either. They were extremely superstitious, though. The last time I'd visited, I'd seen little charms made from bones hanging over the stable doors. One of the family members had been blowing some kind of powder over the horses. I had no idea what it was supposed to do, although somebody later told me it was meant to protect the animals from sickness or worms. I thought it was strange, but people believe what they believe. Aburn Ranch also didn't do much business with outsiders. Most of what they produced went south, deeper into the countryside, rather than toward the larger markets feeding the nearby city. Again, none of my business. The only thing I disliked was the loneliness. Living out in that valley could get painfully quiet, especially in the evenings. It would have been nice to have neighbors I could actually sit down and talk with once in a while. I loaded the horse skin onto the back of my truck. It wasn't easy, not physically, emotionally. I'd always had a soft spot for horses, and it had only been a few weeks since I'd put down Grace, my old white Arabian. Grace had been with me for years. She was getting old, and I knew her time was coming. But knowing doesn't make it easier. She had always behaved more like an oversized dog than a horse. Whenever I drove away, she'd complain. Whenever I came home, she'd prance around excitedly. When she was younger, she somehow managed to get into my bedroom one night. I still don't know exactly how. I woke up to the smell of horse manure and a huge, stupid nose sniffing my face. Most people would call that a nightmare. I still think of it as one of the best mornings of my life. So seeing the empty skin in my truck brought back memories I wasn't ready for. I drove toward Aburn Ranch around dusk. By the time I passed beneath the old sign marking their property, the sky was beginning to darken. I parked near their bungalow. The lights were on. I hoped one of the sons would be home, preferably the youngest, because his English was better than everyone else's. I planned to explain where I'd found the skin and ask whether they wanted it back or whether I could bury it. I had barely made it toward the house when a rifle went off somewhere farther down the road. The sound rolled through the valley. Then came shouting, several voices, men yelling in a language I couldn't understand. And beneath them was another sound, a horse screaming. A moment later, I saw it. A white horse came racing through the fields. Beautiful animal, terrified. Its eyes were wide, and it was moving faster than I thought a frightened horse should be able to move. In the fading light, its white body seemed almost unreal, like something glowing as it flew across the dark grass. No saddle, no visible brand, nothing. It looked wild. Another rifle shot rang out, then another. I ran around the side of the house and saw several men on horseback chasing it. They were shooting at the white horse. I didn't think. I ran into their path and threw my arms out. "Stop!" One of the riders yanked hard on his reins. His horse nearly stumbled. The other riders continued after the white animal. The man who stopped was Jesse, the owner of Aburn Ranch. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. "Is that even your horse?" Jesse started talking so quickly that I couldn't understand a single word. But fear doesn't require translation. His hands were shaking. His voice was breaking. This wasn't an angry rancher trying to recover livestock. This man was terrified. "I can't understand you." He kept talking. I asked for his youngest son. "Ayola? Where's Ayola?" The moment I said the name, Jesse changed. His frantic speech collapsed into something close to sobbing. He grabbed his rifle tightly and kept repeating words at me. I finally understood three things. 911. Ayola, dead. Then another word. Horse. I called 911 because I didn't know what else to do. A cruiser eventually arrived, but the officers couldn't understand Jesse much better than I could. Eventually, I left. Jesse actually dropped to his knees as I was going. He was crying, begging me. I wish I'd tried harder to understand him. For the next few days, I couldn't get his face out of my head. Then word reached me. Ayola was dead. Murdered, apparently. Nobody gave me many details. And then I saw the white horse again. It was standing on my property. The same beautiful white animal I'd seen being chased across the valley. Except now that I had time to look at it, something about it reminded me painfully of Grace. Same white coat, same broad face, same almost foolish expression. The only obvious difference was the tail. Its tail looked too long and strangely damaged, almost like an old rope unraveling at the end. I watched the horse wander around my field for hours. Its walk was unusual. The front and back legs didn't seem properly coordinated. Sometimes it looked as if the front half of the horse had decided where it wanted to go and the rear half was learning a second later. I assumed it had injured itself during the chase. Eventually it wandered toward my pond. Then it did something that made my heart stop. It sat down to drink. Grace used to do that. I'd never understood why. She would lower herself into almost the exact same place beside the pond and drink in her strange little way, bobbing her head while her tongue flicked against the water. This horse did exactly that. Same spot, same posture, same movement. I took off my glasses. Without them, the animal might as well have been Grace. I knew that was sentimental nonsense. Grace was dead. I'd buried her myself. But grief does strange things to you. I approached carefully. The horse immediately pushed its face against me. That was it. Whatever caution I'd had disappeared. I stroked its nose. A few minutes later, I was riding it. Nobody had broken this horse in, as far as I knew, yet it accepted me without resistance. I named her Gina. I spent almost the entire day with her. For the first time since Grace died, I felt some warmth return to the ranch. That mattered more than I want to admit. My wife had been gone for years. So had my daughter. A house fire took both of them. Afterward, Grace became more than livestock to me. She was family. Some nights I'd even let her into the house. I'd put food on a plate and let her sit near the place where my daughter once sat. I knew how ridiculous it looked. I didn't care. When you're alone long enough, you stop worrying about whether your coping mechanisms look normal. That evening, I brought Gina into the stable. Every other horse lost its mind. They screamed, reared, kicked, pulled against their stalls. I'd heard frightened horses before, but never anything like this. Their panic was immediate, absolute. They reacted to Gina the way prey animals might react to a predator entering their enclosure. Gina didn't react. She calmly walked through the screaming animals and entered Grace's old stall. That should have been enough for me. I should have taken Gina outside. Instead, I told myself the other horses were reacting to an unfamiliar animal. That night, I ate alone, as usual. But the ranch wasn't quiet. The horses kept screaming. Their cries carried from the stable and through the walls of the house. It brought back memories I didn't want. Fire. My wife. My little girl. For the first time, I found myself wondering whether they had screamed like that while trapped in the house. I went to bed trying not to think about it. My dreams were filled with fire. Then people. Dark figures following me. Every time I turned around, they seemed to disappear into my own shadow. I woke suddenly. 2 men were standing beside my bed. They were completely naked. Their skin looked almost black in the darkness. Their eyes were white. Not glowing, cloudy. Like cataracts. They were smiling. Huge smiles. Neither man moved. They seemed to be listening. Then I realized what they were listening to. The horses. Except the screaming had stopped. The stable was completely silent. I blinked. Both men vanished. I grabbed the gun I kept under the bed. Nobody was in the room. Nobody was in the hallway. I looked through the window. The barn doors were open. I pulled on my coat and went outside. The night air cut into my lungs. The grass was wet and cold around my legs. When I reached the stable, I stopped. Every horse was gone, except Gina. The following morning, I called the police. 11 missing horses. Everyone branded on the left hindquarter. The police said they'd send people around the valley, but There wasn't much else they could do. Eventually, I decided to visit Aburn Ranch again. Maybe they'd seen something. When I arrived, Jesse was outside working near a patch of corn. His eldest son was nearby with a horse. The boy had a bruised face and blood around his nose. The moment Jesse saw me, he ran over. Again came the flood of words. Again, I couldn't understand most of them. But this time, I caught something. Horse. Where? He kept asking. Have you seen my horses? I asked. His eldest son approached. He translated slowly. Father asks if you have taken in the horse. My stomach tightened. What horse? Jesse spoke to him. The boy looked at me. White horse. Bad tail. I hesitated. Yes. Jesse went pale. It's in my barn. He looked like he was going to vomit. Then he began talking frantically. His son translated. He says, go home now. What? Before it notices you are gone. Something cold opened inside my chest. The boy stared directly at me. It is not a horse. I said nothing. Go home, he repeated. Important. Act normal. I ran back to my truck. Jesse and his son followed. They told me they would come later. They would help. But I had to act normal. Those words stayed in my head during the entire drive. Act normal. Act normal. Act normal. I reached for the pistol I usually kept in the glove compartment. Empty. I'd left it in my bedroom. When I reached my property, the barn doors were wide open. Then I noticed the walls. Bloody handprints covered them. Not hoof prints. Hands. Human hands. They were smeared across the red boards, along the walls, and even higher toward the roof. I nearly ran. Then I remembered Jesse's warning. Act normal. I went toward the house. There was blood on the doorknob. Locked. I never locked that door. I stood there staring at it. Then I forced myself toward the barn. The smell inside was overwhelming. Iron. Blood. Death. I entered. All my horses were back. All 12. Including Gina. For one beautiful second, relief hit me. Then I noticed how they were standing. Perfectly still. Every hoof planted. Every head turned toward me. Every horse was staring at me. Except Gina. None of them blinked. Flies landed on their faces. They didn't react. I pretended everything was normal. I filled their water, put out food. Did the work I had done thousands of times before. None of them ate. I prayed under my breath and walked toward the door. Behind me came a heavy scraping sound. The horses were climbing over the stall doors. Not opening them. Climbing. I heard their bodies drag across the wood. Then their hooves struck the floor. I refused to turn around. I walked outside, closed the barn door. A second later, the knob turned behind me. The door opened. Hooves stepped into the grass. I turned slowly. All 12 horses were outside. They weren't looking at me anymore. They were staring in different directions. And that's when I noticed something else. None of them were breathing. No movement in their sides. No air from their nostrils. Nothing. I started doing chores. There was nothing else I could think to do. Wherever I walked, they followed. 24 footsteps moved through the grass behind me. I tended crops, fixed things that didn't need fixing, moved equipment from one place to another, anything to keep acting normal. Every second I could hear them. Eventually the sun began going down. I'd run out of chores. I had to go inside. As I passed Gina, I saw something in her side. A hole. Not a wound exactly. An opening. Inside was darkness. I stared. Something moved in that darkness. 2 white eyes opened. I blinked. The hole was gone. I walked faster. Behind me, the sound changed. The hoofbeats became footsteps. Human footsteps. Quiet. Careful. Following me. When I reached the house, the door was still locked. I grabbed the knob. Nothing. I searched my pockets. No key. I never carried one because I never locked the house. Then the footsteps stopped, silent. I knew they were behind me. I didn't need to look. I could feel them watching. Then I felt warm breath against the back of my neck. I almost screamed. Instead, I heard whispering, several voices. Some seemed to be speaking to me. Others seemed to be talking among themselves. And some sounded like they were speaking to something beneath the ground. Then another sound reached me. An engine. Tires moving along the dirt road. The whispering stopped. I heard movement behind me. Jesse's truck appeared. When I turned around, the horses were grazing peacefully. Normal animals. Maybe I'd imagined everything. Maybe grief had finally broken something inside my head. I ran toward Jesse's truck. He and his eldest son climbed out carrying rifles. "Come," Jesse said. I reached him. He suddenly blew a handful of powder directly into my face. I fell to my knees, coughing. It burned my throat. It smelled like gasoline and hot sand. His son handed me a rifle. Jesse pointed toward my house. "Look." I looked, and for the first time I saw what was actually standing in my field. They were not horses. They were men underneath the skins. A dozen human-shaped figures wandered through the grass, each wearing the empty skin of one of my horses over its body. The horse legs hung around them. The heads rested over them like grotesque hoods. Their bare human feet moved beneath the hides. Each horse skin had an opening cut into its side. Inside those openings were faces, eyes. White eyes staring from impossible darkness. The things had taken my horses and were wearing them. Maybe that was what the skin on my property had been. Not the remains of an animal killed for meat. A discarded suit. Something had worn that horse until it no longer needed it. And Gina, whatever I'd welcomed onto my property, had been wearing something that looked like Grace. Maybe that was why she knew Grace's habits. Maybe she'd watched us. Maybe she had learned. Or maybe whatever lived beneath that white skin had reached into my memories and found the one shape I would never turn away. Jesse raised his rifle. He fired. The bullet struck one of the creatures. Nothing happened. He fired again. Then his son. I joined them. Gunshots rolled across the valley. The things barely reacted. They didn't charge, didn't run, didn't fall. They simply stood there, watching. Jesse lowered his rifle. "Get out," he whispered. Then he grabbed me. "We go." I didn't argue. We climbed into the pickup. Jesse drove. I sat in the back seat, staring through the rear window as my ranch disappeared into the distance. The sun was almost completely below the horizon. For a few moments, I could still see the white shapes scattered across the property. Then darkness swallowed them. I thought that was the end. Then the eyes appeared. Not 12 pairs, not 20, not 50, hundreds, maybe thousands. White eyes emerged across the darkness of the valley, in the fields, between trees, along the hills, behind my house, around my barn. Places where no people had been standing. Places where nothing should have been. All watching us leave. Jesse kept driving. Nobody spoke. I understood then why his family had hung bones above their stables, why they used strange powders, why they'd chased that white horse with rifles, why Jesse had nearly broken down when I told him I'd brought it home. They hadn't been hunting an animal. They'd been trying to stop something from finding another place to live. I sold the ranch afterward, never went back. People asked why. I gave them simple answers. Too many memories, too isolated. Couldn't manage the place alone anymore. All of those things were true. They just weren't the whole truth. The truth is that I couldn't sleep there again. I couldn't walk past a horse without wondering whether something was standing inside it. Couldn't watch an animal breathe without checking twice to make sure its chest was actually moving. Couldn't hear footsteps in the grass without remembering those things following me around my own property, while I pretended not to notice. Sometimes I still think about Grace, the real Grace. I think about her sneaking into my bedroom when she was young. I think about her waiting for me when I came home. I think about the way she'd sit beside the pond. And then, whether I wanted to or not, the memory changes. Grace's white body becomes Gina's. Her side opens. The darkness inside looks back at me. And somewhere inside that darkness are two pale human eyes. People have given me plenty of explanations over the years. Ghosts, shapeshifters, demons, sorcerers, vengeful spirits. I don't know what they were. Jesse had his beliefs. Other people had theirs. I've stopped trying to name them. Names make things sound understandable. Those things weren't. All I know is that I woke up one morning and found the empty skin of a horse lying on my property. At the time, I thought something terrible had happened to the animal. Now I understand that I was looking at a warning. Something had finished using that horse. It had stepped out of the skin. And somewhere in the valley, it was already looking for another one. Marco and I were sitting on a bench near Lullaby Beach, eating hot dogs while the last bit of daylight faded over the ocean. It wasn't exactly a great dinner, but it was the only food we could grab before heading down to the site. A few officers were already near the beach, setting up warning tape and keeping curious people away from the shoreline. Marco was taking his time with his food. I had already finished mine when he looked down at his hot dog and started talking about mustard. You know, I used to hate mustard, he said. Couldn't stand it. Now I can't get enough. Dijon, spicy mustard, honey mustard, all of it. Good for you, I said. I'm still not much of a mustard guy. He looked strangely thoughtful. That's not the point. The mustard was always the same. It didn't change because I didn't like it. I changed until I liked the mustard. I stared at him. You seriously think you somehow evolved your taste buds just because you wanted to enjoy mustard? Marco shrugged. I'm just saying it's weird when you think about it. Well, now I'm thinking about it. Before he could continue his strange little philosophy lesson, one of the officers waved us over. I stood and whistled to the other volunteers. The sun was almost gone. We had a long night ahead of us. I had been visiting Lullaby Beach at least once or twice a year since I was 15. I was almost 42 now, so the place had become strangely familiar to me. It wasn't a particularly famous beach, but people involved in marine wildlife rescue knew about it. Gray whales had a habit of becoming stranded there. The coastline created something close to a natural trap. Older whales sometimes became confused by the currents and ended up pushed toward shore. I once spoke with a marine biologist who described that particular stretch of coastline as almost perfectly designed to trap a confused whale. Even after decades of helping with rescues, seeing one stranded never became easy. Their size was incredible, but their eyes were what always bothered me. Those enormous, gentle eyes seemed almost too expressive. They looked confused, afraid, as if they were wondering why everything suddenly hurt. There were 6 of us volunteering that evening. We had arrived early enough that our job was mostly assessment. We needed to determine the whale's condition, clear dangerous rocks around her, keep her comfortable, and figure out whether she might survive until morning. If everything looked good, we'd bring inflatable equipment down after sunrise and start digging a trench that might help the incoming current carry her back toward deeper water. Freddie was already crying before we'd even gotten close. Whales were his favorite animals. He owned at least 6 shirts covered in cartoon whales, usually with hearts or ridiculous sad eyes printed around them. Before we had even confirmed what species we were dealing with, Freddie had already named her Minnie. Minnie the whale, he said. Nobody argued. Police normally didn't supervise whale rescues, but there had been accidents on that beach involving curious visitors getting too close. People underestimate how dangerous a stranded whale can be. An animal that large doesn't need to attack you. One accidental movement can crush a person. After something like that happens once, authorities make sure it doesn't happen twice. The officers knew me anyway. Every 6 or 7 months, I seemed to end up being one of the first experienced volunteers called to the beach. Walking toward Minnie reminded me again how impossible it is to understand the size of a whale until you're standing beside one. A gray whale isn't the largest whale in the ocean, but that's almost meaningless when you're next to one. She was enormous. Imagine standing beside a city bus and then realizing the bus is alive. I placed my hand against her skin. It felt rough, almost like wet cardboard mixed with sandpaper. There was something unusual about Minnie, though. Salt covered her skin in a thick layer, far more than I remembered seeing on other stranded whales. The smell was surprisingly strong, too. She smelled almost like pickles. Her breathing was shallow and short, but that wasn't necessarily alarming. She was stranded on a beach and surrounded by strange little humans touching her. Any animal would be stressed. Marco examined her carefully. "I'm not seeing any obvious damage," he called. Eyes? Closed, probably resting. Freddie was wiping tears from his cheeks. "She's beautiful." He looked at me. "She's healthy, right?" I checked the sand around her. No blood, no unusual wounds, no terrible smell that might indicate serious internal damage. A proper marine veterinarian would examine her in the morning, but from what we could see, things looked surprisingly positive. "I think so," I said. "Let's clear the rocks around her and make her comfortable." One of the officers called down to us. "You've got an hour." Freddie immediately protested. "An hour? We can't do anything in an hour." "That's what you've got. We'll come back in the morning. We're not leaving everyone alone out here overnight." Then he pointed at me. "You can stay longer if you want. We've already got your paperwork." That wasn't unusual. I had enough experience that they trusted me not to crawl beneath a whale or do anything equally stupid. Marco believed Minnie was healthy enough to survive another day or two if necessary. She wasn't elderly. She looked like a strong adult female, probably still young enough to have calves after returning to the ocean. One by one, the others eventually left. Soon, it was just Minnie and me. I walked around her slowly. There was a large scar between her eyes, probably a boat strike from years earlier. Other than that, she looked remarkably healthy. She had also been lucky with where she'd landed. Much of the Oregon coastline around there was brutally rocky. A stranded whale could easily tear itself open on something sharp as the tide retreated. Minnie had somehow reached a smooth section of sand. I gently touched her head. "We'll get you out tomorrow, girl." She didn't move. "Don't worry. There wasn't much else I could do." The equipment had been requested. Volunteers had been contacted. The rescue would begin properly after sunrise. Driving home would take about an hour, and returning would take another hour, which meant I'd barely sleep. So I decided to sleep in the van. I started walking away. Then I felt heat against my back. I turned. Minnie's mouth was opening. A wave of warm air rolled from inside her, carrying the smell of kelp and rock salt. I cautiously moved a little closer. "It's okay," I told her. "We'll get you home." Her mouth moved. Then I heard a voice. "Thank you." I froze. It was a woman's voice. Soft, quiet, almost affectionate. I looked around the beach. Nobody hello? No response from anywhere around me. Who's there? The voice came again. I am here. I looked at Minnie. Her mouth moved slightly. The voice became muffled when her mouth closed. My stomach tightened. Do you not hear me? I stared at the whale. The sound was coming from inside her. That was impossible. Maybe someone was hiding nearby. Maybe exhaustion was affecting me. Maybe one of the volunteers was playing some ridiculous joke. No, I finally said. I hear you. Who are you? I am right here, silly. Minnie's left eye opened. It looked directly at me. I turned around and walked away. No hesitation. I went straight back to the van. Something was wrong with me. That was the only explanation I could accept. I grabbed the first aid kit and checked everything I reasonably could. Pulse, blood pressure, pupils, awareness. I even wondered whether Marco had slipped something into my drink when we'd stopped at the gas station. But I felt physically normal. My heart was racing, obviously, but everything else seemed fine. I climbed into the back of the van and rolled out my sleeping bag. I couldn't sleep. My mouth was dry. I could still smell the salt. I forced myself to think logically. Whales cannot speak English. That was a fact. Therefore, either I had imagined the voice or something else had created it. Eventually, curiosity became stronger than fear. I returned to the beach. The moment I approached Minnie, her eye moved toward me. Where did you go? I stopped several yards away. You're not talking. Silence. You can't be talking. You're a whale. You can't understand me. I do. I needed proof. Blink 3 times. Minnie blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. Quickly, my knees almost gave out. I walked around her, searching for speakers, people, wires, anything, nothing. Okay, I said. If you're actually a whale talking to me, tell me why you're here. I promised I would be. You promised to get stranded? I promised to meet a friend. What friend? She lives in the city. Would you mind fetching her for me? I laughed. I couldn't help it. The situation had become so absurd that laughing was the only reaction left. You've got some nerve. You are very helpful. That is one of many reasons I enjoy you. I stopped laughing. You enjoy me? The whale's body shifted slightly. For one insane moment, I wondered if she was laughing. Then, Minnie asked something that completely changed the situation. Are your children well? Every muscle in my body tightened. My children? Yes. I'd rather not talk about them. What of the small one? Is he still playing the string instrument? Cold seemed to spread through my chest. I had 2 sons. My youngest had started playing guitar about a year earlier. He was getting pretty good. There was absolutely no reason this animal could know that. Do you know my family? I know them well. Then she proved it. She knew my wife's name, both of my children's names, my dog's name, my full name, including my middle name, my home address, the wildlife rescue organization I worked with. Then she described the wallpaper in my bedroom. Yellow tulips, blue sunflowers. For several minutes, I simply stared at her. Then my mind desperately created an explanation. You're me. Minnie's eye remained fixed on me. This is happening inside my head. You're only telling me things I already know. Find the woman. What? She is a stranger to you. Why would you know her name? That stopped me. Minnie gave me a woman's full name and address. Kalina. I'd never heard the name before. I returned to my van and opened my laptop. It didn't take long. Galina existed. The name matched. The address matched. I searched my contacts, emails, newsletters, and anything else that might explain why I'd subconsciously remembered her. Nothing. She didn't even work in wildlife rescue. She was an administrator for a private prison company. I stared at the screen. How could Minnie know her? More importantly, How could Minnie know me? I could have stayed until morning. That would have been sensible. Instead, I started the van. I wasn't planning to fetch Galena. I just wanted answers. Her home was far enough away that I'd arrive shortly before midnight. Driving helped calm me down. Speed limits were normal, traffic signs were normal, my GPS was normal. Freddie texted asking whether Minnie was okay. I told him she was. He'd already started organizing more volunteers for morning. Galena lived inside a gated community farther north along the Pacific coast. The place was isolated and extremely expensive. At the entrance, a night guard stopped me. Little late for visitors. You lost? I'm with Marine Wildlife Rescue. I'm looking for Galena. I gave him her full name and address. His expression changed. He apparently knew her. He made a phone call. After saying only a few words, he looked surprised. Then the gate opened. Third house on the right. The neighborhood was almost unnaturally clean. Large two-story homes, perfect lawns, huge garages. I stopped outside Galena's house. Before I could reach the door, a man wearing a bathrobe came outside holding a cocktail. He pointed at me. You, get the hell out. I'm sorry. I was told Galena was here. You don't talk to her. Get back in your car and leave. I started retreating toward the van. Then Galena appeared. She was holding a handgun. She looked to be in her early 50s, with tired brown eyes and carefully applied makeup. She wore a yellow summer dress and looked like she had prepared for some important event. This is happening, she told the man. You're not stopping me. For Christ's sake, Gail, you're pointing a gun at me. You said you'd duct tape me to a chair because you're acting insane. 28 years. Her voice broke. I've waited 28 years for this, and you knew it. She walked straight to my van and climbed into the passenger seat. The man shouted after her. You can't leave. Hayden's wedding is in 6 months. Galena looked at me. Drive, I drove. Once we were outside the neighborhood, she finally relaxed. She opened the revolver, checked the chambers, then seemed disgusted with herself and threw it into my glove compartment. I didn't even know where to begin. What do you think this is about? I asked. The beach. She looked at me. She's back, isn't she? The whale? Galena laughed. Whale, sure, then she studied my expression. Wait. Her smile disappeared. You actually think it's a whale. I don't know what I think. I thought you were part of the pod. The what? What are you? 4th in line? 6th? In line for what? Instead of answering, Galena pointed toward a gas station. It was the same one where Marco and I had bought our hot dogs. Stop, she rushed inside and started grabbing food. Chocolate, jerky, cheese, snacks, sugary drinks, anything she could carry. When the cashier gave her the total, Galena realized she didn't have money. So she removed her jewelry. Necklace, earring, wedding ring. She placed the ring on the counter. This alone is worth $8,000. Then she walked out carrying the food. The cashier looked at me. Is she okay? I have absolutely no idea. Back in the van, Galena ate like someone enjoying her final meal. Chocolate covered her fingers. Soda spilled onto her expensive yellow dress. I can't believe you haven't said yes, she said. Yes to what? The proposition. I haven't been offered anything. She frowned. Then why are you doing this? Because I want to know why a whale can talk. Whales can't talk. I nearly shouted. Then what is that thing? Galena shrugged. Why do you need to give it a name? Because I need to understand what's happening. She became quieter. Then she explained. When she'd first become involved in the 1990s, they had apparently accepted almost anyone. Lonely people. People searching for purpose. People with nowhere else to go. But whatever Minnie really was hadn't understood exactly what it wanted. Some of those early people had been torn up. So they created a selection process. They searched for appropriate people. Galena had waited decades. She had never been chosen. Until tonight. What exactly were you waiting to be chosen for? I asked. She closed her eyes. I'm going far away. She smiled. Far, far away. We eventually reached Lullaby Beach. While Galena rested in the passenger seat, I looked through some old photographs Freddie had posted online, pictures of previous whale rescues. Then I noticed something. The previous whale had a scar between its eyes, almost exactly like Minnie's. I couldn't understand how I'd forgotten it. You've seen her before, I said. Galena smiled. Many times, and every time she comes back, I've been waiting. She opened the door, but she's never summoned me before. She looked toward the ocean. Not until tonight. Then she ran. I followed. When Minnie appeared ahead of us, Galena opened her arms like she was seeing an old friend. Minnie made a deep sound. You are here. I'm here. Galena pressed herself against the whale's rough skin. Have you decided where I'm going? Yes, it's not the cold one, is it? Not the cold one. Galena looked relieved. You will see the green one, off the coast of Portugal. Portugal. She laughed with genuine happiness. Oh, darling, you know me so well. She kissed Minnie. Then she turned toward me and waved. Thank you. Something about her calmness terrified me more than anything else that night. Don't worry, she said. Everything will be fine. Then she faced Minnie, closed her eyes, and opened her arms. Minnie's mouth opened. Something came out. Not a tongue. Not anything belonging inside a whale. A huge mass of wet flesh expanded from her mouth. Hundreds of thin appendages unfolded from it. They looked almost like newborn arms covered in oil and mucus. Each limb contained too many joints and ended in a long, sharp claw. They wrapped around Galena. She didn't scream. She laughed. The tendrils pulled her into Minnie's mouth. Her excited laughter was the last sound I heard before she disappeared. I stood frozen. You ate her. Minnie remained still. You fucking ate her. Thank you for bringing her. You tricked me. I asked politely. What are you? You always use such colorful words. I stepped backward. The tendrils exploded from her mouth again. One wrapped around my ankle. Another slid beneath my shirt. It felt like warm seaweed moving across my skin. I fell. They dragged me toward Minnie. I kicked and screamed. Then she said something that stopped me colder than any threat could have. You made it further last time. Last time? Perhaps next time, you will not run with such vigor. The mouth closed around me. Darkness, heat, a sour smell. Something sharp punctured my leg. Then I remembered. Not clearly, not like an ordinary memory, more like my body remembered before my mind did. This had happened before. The creatures searched my pockets. It found my wallet. The photograph of my wife, my children, my youngest holding his guitar. The photograph taken in our bedroom with those yellow tulips and blue sunflowers on the wall. That was how Minnie knew. She had seen everything before. Inside the creature, I was processed almost like an object moving along a conveyor belt. My clothing was removed, my hair examined, my body turned over, every scar and fold of skin inspected. Some appendages had hands, actual hands, and Minnie's voice surrounded me. Your loyalty is admirable. I tried to speak. Something entered my mouth, a sharp object pressed against the roof. Then something chemical seemed to pour directly into my thoughts. The smell reminded me of burnt sugar mixed with floral detergent. Pressure built behind my eyes. My heartbeat no longer felt like mine. Something else was controlling it. Then suddenly, I wasn't inside Minnie anymore. I stood on a beach. Sunset covered the horizon. A city burned in the distance. Black smoke swallowed the stars. Lightning struck the ocean again and again as an enormous storm approached. Galena appeared beside me, but she wasn't 50 anymore. She looked young, healthy, beautiful, still wearing the yellow dress. She wrapped herself around my arm. Don't be discouraged. Where are we? You'll get here eventually. I don't want this. Neither did I at first. Behind her, people were dying in the burning city. Cars became ovens. Bomb shelters overflowed. The sick and elderly were pushed outside. Something impossible seemed to be opening in the sky. Galena kissed my cheek. It's not every day you're invited into someone's home. She stepped backward into the ocean. If you keep saying no, eventually they'll stop asking. Wouldn't that be good? She smiled. Depends on the house. Then her body dissolved into the black water. The vision changed. Hands touched my face. Someone brushed my hair. There was warmth, kindness, comfort, everything a frightened person might want. I will care for you. Beautiful bodies, soft beds, familiar voices whispering beside me. Would you care to stay? For a moment, part of me wanted to. That was the worst part. Then I forced myself to say no. I couldn't speak, but I pushed the thought as hard as possible. No, 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 there is always next time. I grabbed the object inside my mouth and pulled. A long bone like spike came free. Pain exploded through my skull. Then, darkness disappeared. Morning sunlight hit my face. I was lying naked on the beach. Ocean water washed around my mouth. My arm was numb. There was a wound on the roof of my mouth and several punctures across my skin. Then I heard someone shouting. Jesus Christ. Marco. He ran toward me. Freddie and several other volunteers were behind him. They had arrived for the rescue. Marco looked toward the water. She got loose by herself. Freddie started celebrating. How did she do that? Freddie, shut the fuck up and find his clothes. Someone called an ambulance. Another volunteer said I had a fever. Everyone else stared at the enormous wet shape Minnie had left in the sand. They thought it was a miracle. Minnie had somehow returned to the ocean without their help. I was taken to the hospital and given antibiotics. My wife and children were terrified. I told them I had been injured during the rescue. That explanation seemed reasonable. Then, my wife said something strange. I'd suffered similar injuries before, months earlier, during another whale rescue. I didn't remember it. I looked at photographs later. That whale had also escaped almost entirely on its own, and it had the same scar. Marco visited me in the hospital. He brought a sandwich, ham and cheese, extra mustard. We talked normally for a while. Then I looked at the sandwich. You know, Marco, I don't like mustard. I know. But I've tried it. Sure, I'm getting used to it. Marco smiled. Strange, isn't it? I thought about the conversation we'd had before Minnie arrived. Maybe it wasn't strange at all. Maybe people can learn to enjoy almost anything if they're exposed to it long enough. Even something they once hated. Even something they once feared. When I finally left the hospital, I wrote down everything I could remember. I'm sharing it now because I don't trust myself to remember later. Parts of that night are already disappearing. I can't remember Galena's exact address. I can't picture the man who tried to stop her from leaving. I can't remember exactly how tall Galena was. The memories aren't fading naturally. It feels like something is covering them, like clear gel slowly hardening inside my brain, carefully sealing away the pieces Minnie doesn't want me examining. Eventually, I suspect I'll remember nothing except touching the rough skin of a stranded gray whale and going back to my van to sleep until morning. Maybe I'll forget Galena completely. Maybe I've forgotten other people already. That's the thought that frightens me most. I've been rescuing whales for decades. How many times has Minnie returned? How many strangers have I brought to her? How many times have those things pulled me inside? How many times has she asked me to stay? I don't know. But I know she's coming back. She told me herself. And apparently I've been saying no for years. Maybe decades. The problem is that this time something was different. This time, when she offered me that impossible place filled with warmth, comfort, and promises, my answer wasn't immediate. For just a moment, I considered it. That's why I keep thinking about Marco. About mustard. Mustard doesn't change. You do. You taste something you hate once. Then again. Then again. Eventually, the bitterness doesn't bother you quite as much. Eventually, you stop pulling away. Eventually, you might even begin looking forward to it. Minnie knows that. Maybe that's why she doesn't force me to stay. She doesn't have to. She has time. She'll come back. I'll find another whale stranded on Lullaby Beach, probably with salt covering its skin and that familiar scar between its eyes. I'll volunteer to stay behind. I'll touch her rough skin, and she'll open her mouth. Maybe I'll remember, maybe I won't. She'll ask again. And I'll say no. Probably. But the next time might be different. Because despite everything I saw inside that creature, despite Galena disappearing into its mouth, and despite waking naked and wounded on the beach, there is one thought I haven't been able to get out of my head. Maybe I should try just a little mustard. Nothing serious. Just enough to understand why Marco likes it. Just a taste. After all, people change. And maybe, given enough time, I'll learn to like it too. Some people might remember my podcast. It was never one of the biggest shows on the internet, but it was doing pretty well for itself. I had been working on it for a year, sharing stories about strange local legends, unexplained events, and things most people would normally ignore. A few weeks after my one-year anniversary, something happened that I still can't explain. Every episode I had ever uploaded became corrupted. It didn't matter where people listened. Every platform showed the same thing. Instead of hearing my voice, all anyone could hear was static. At first, I thought it was some kind of technical issue, maybe a bad file upload, maybe a problem with the hosting service. But then I noticed something else. There was something underneath the static, a sound buried so deeply that I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. But every time I listened carefully, I could hear something faint, a voice, or maybe someone screaming. I couldn't tell for sure, but the sound was there, and it bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I deleted everything and tried uploading the episodes again. Nothing worked. I switched accounts. I used different devices. I even changed my internet connection and my IP address. Nothing helped. The strangest part was that I could upload anything else without a problem. Videos, audio files, random recordings. Everything worked normally. It was only the podcast. Every USB drive I used to save the episodes eventually became corrupted too. After one of my listeners suggested I come here, I decided this was my last option. If the internet refused to keep the episodes online, then I would have to manually write them down. If anyone remembers these stories, I want to know. This was the first episode of Dead Air Broadcast. My name is Tony, and I created this show to search for strange local legends. Not just to talk about them, but to actually find them. For this episode, I returned to my hometown for the first time since I was a kid. I wanted to talk to locals and hear the stories they grew up with. My mom had told me a few legends when I was younger, but honestly, they were always the same kind of stories. The Bubble Man, the Hat Man, some random creature with man added to the end of its name. They were creepy when I was a kid, but I wanted something different. I wanted a real story, something that wasn't just a childhood nightmare. I wanted something disturbing, something that would actually stay with me. I don't scare easily anymore. I honestly couldn't remember the last time something truly frightened me. That changed when I visited a small bar in the heart of Lou Halls. It was the kind of place most people would drive past without noticing. A small, old building with faded signs, quiet locals, and the feeling that everyone inside already knew each other. That was where I met Steph. He was an older man who worked as a city inspector. I asked if he would share any local legends for the podcast. Before we started recording, he immediately looked suspicious. "This is for YouTube?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "YouTube and some other platforms." "Then don't use my last name." I laughed. "What is your last name?" He stared at me. "You want the story or not? I told you this drink only buys you 10 minutes. I joked with him and told him to continue. He took a drink, looked around the bar, and began. "Anyhow, my mama used to warn me about being out in the woods near the lake at night." He explained that when he was young, he always thought his mother was just being overly protective. Most parents worried about their kids. That was normal. But the lake was different. Whenever he mentioned going near it, his mother became serious. One night, he stayed out past his curfew, only by a few minutes. But when he got home, his mother was furious. She scared him enough that he stayed away from that lake for years. Eventually, when he was older, he finally asked her why. Why that lake? Why was she so afraid of it? According to Steph, his mother looked at him for a long time before answering. "Something's out there," she said. "It's stuck." That was all she ever told him. No explanation, no details, nothing else. Of course, that only made him more curious. Years later, he finally learned the story behind the lake. When Lou Halls was first founded, 11 major families settled in the area. One of those families was the McAllisters. They built their home closest to the lake. There were 15 members of the family. Then, during the third winter after they arrived, they disappeared. No warning, no goodbye, nothing. The town searched everywhere for them. But it looked like the entire family had simply stood up and walked away. Their belongings were still there. Their animals were still there. Their crops were untouched. Even dinner was left sitting on the table. It was as if they vanished in the middle of a normal evening. The search continued for weeks. Nobody found a single clue. Years passed. Then one summer, a logging crew began clearing trees around the lake. One worker cut down a large tree. Inside that tree, they found something impossible, a skeleton. Then another. Then another. Eventually, they discovered all 15 members of the McAllister family. Their remains had somehow been placed inside the trees surrounding the lake. The bones were old, but that wasn't the only strange thing. They shouldn't have physically fit inside those trees. Steph said his mother was 12 years old when they were discovered. For weeks afterward, the entire town smelled like fresh pine. But according to him, that wasn't even the part that scared him. The real problem was what people started seeing afterward. Every once in a while, someone would claim they saw figures standing near the lake at night. Dark shapes, people-shaped silhouettes. They never moved closer. They never spoke. They just stood there watching. Most people assumed it was teenagers trying to scare people, or drunk people seeing things. But Steph said one night when he was 19, he saw something himself. He and some friends had been drinking since the previous morning. By sunset, they were exhausted. At some point, everyone passed out. Steph woke up as the sun was disappearing. He was freezing. So he went outside to collect wood for a fire. When he returned, his friend John was awake. Together, they started the fire and sat there trying to recover. Then John suddenly looked toward the forest. "Who is that?" he whispered. Steph looked in the same direction. He couldn't see anything. "There's people out there," John said. Steph laughed at first. He thought his friend was trying to scare him, but John didn't laugh. He didn't move. Then Steph noticed something. John was terrified, not nervous, not uncomfortable, terrified. His face had completely changed. His eyes were locked on the woods. A tear rolled down his face. Steph shook him and asked what he saw. John couldn't answer. He just kept staring. Finally, he whispered something. Steph couldn't remember the whole sentence, but he remembered the last two words. The trees. At that exact moment, they heard a loud crash behind them. John immediately woke everyone up. He started running. Not walking, not moving quickly, running like his life depended on it. Steph said he had never heard anyone scream the way John screamed that night. They ran as fast as they could. And then Steph made the mistake of looking back. He saw them. Dark figures standing against the trees, their bodies almost blended into the forest. Their eyes were wide and bloodshot. They all moved at the same time. Then they stepped behind the trees and never came out the other side. Steph finished his story and the bar became quiet. I didn't know what to say. Then another man at the bar laughed. "This guy's full of it," he said. "Buy me a drink and I'll tell you something real." His name was Lee. I introduced myself and told him I would buy him a drink if he had a good story. He smiled. "I have one you've never heard before." I ordered 2 shots. "Make it 3, he said. "2 for now." The bartender interrupted. "I already poured 3. I sighed. "Fine. Whatever." Lee leaned closer. Then he told me about a strange warning that everyone in town supposedly knew. Never drive around the square after 2:22 a.m. And if you do drive after that time, enter your vehicle through the passenger side first. Then ask permission to drive, loudly. Because if you don't, something might happen. You may find yourself driving down an unfamiliar road, confused, sitting in the back seat. And the worst part? You won't know who's driving. You will see someone sitting behind the wheel, but your mind won't understand what you are seeing. It's like your brain refuses to recognize the person. Most people eventually end up back home or somewhere close. They wake up with a terrible headache and dizziness. But sometimes they return to the exact place where they started. And according to the legend, if that happens, you should never drive in that area again. I looked around the bar. Nobody laughed. Nobody joked. Then another man spoke up. I have a better one. His name was Steve. He said he had a story about the witch from 1999. The room went silent. Everyone looked uncomfortable. Steve ignored them. He said there was a woman who lived outside town back in 1998. She seemed normal. She worked at a local warehouse. She had no husband, no children, nothing unusual about her. But then one day, police received a call from a child at her house. The child claimed she was pulling babies out of a hole in her garage. The woman kept children in the basement. She forced them to do things they didn't want to do. She made them drink blood. She made them repeat strange nursery rhymes while standing inside circles made of salt. And when they became too old, she pushed them back into the hole. When police asked the child how he knew all this, the answer was terrifying. He said he was one of them. He remembered being with his family when he was 4 years old. He remembered being pulled into a wall while everyone slept. He didn't remember his last name, but he remembered people calling him Johnny. Eventually, he escaped. The police searched the house. they found 14 other children. All of them were weak, dirty, and standing inside circles of salt. The children who could speak confirmed Johnny's story, but police never explained the hole, because the hole was impossible. It was located in an outside wall. There should have been nothing behind it. No room, no tunnel, nothing. They never found the woman. Her house was abandoned, but the hole remained. When Steve offered to show me the place, everyone in the bar immediately told me not to go. The bartender warned me. Steph warned me. Lee warned me. Everyone. But Steve insisted it was safe. He even offered me $500 if the hole wasn't real, so I agreed. That was the biggest mistake I made, because that night, I learned some legends are not just stories. Some things really are waiting to be found. And sometimes, finding them means they find you too. I live on the second floor of an apartment building, so I never really worried about anyone being able to see inside my windows. It was something I had never seriously thought about before. My bedroom window faces the parking lot, a few trees, and another apartment building across from mine. There isn't anything interesting outside. No busy street, no view of anything special, just the same quiet scene every day. Because my room doesn't get much natural light, I usually keep my curtains open. During the day, it makes the room feel less dark and closed in. At night, I never really bothered closing them either. I always figured there was no reason to. Nobody could see anything from that distance. At least that's what I thought. The first time I saw her, it was probably around midnight. I was lying in bed, half watching videos on my phone, when something made me look up toward the window. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. There was someone standing outside. I remember staring for a few seconds, trying to make sense of it. My brain was searching for some normal explanation. Maybe it was a reflection. Maybe someone was standing on a balcony. Maybe I was just tired and seeing things. But the longer I looked, the more certain I became that there was actually someone there. It was a woman. She was far enough away that I couldn't see her face clearly, but I could tell by her shape and the way she was standing. She wasn't walking. She wasn't looking around. She wasn't doing anything. She was just standing there, facing my window. That was the part that bothered me the most. Not that someone was outside, but that she seemed to be looking directly at me. My first thought was that she had to be standing on a balcony or some kind of walkway. But when I really thought about it, that didn't make sense. There were no balconies on that side of the building. There wasn't anywhere she could stand that would put her at the exact height of my window. I slowly got out of bed and walked closer. I wanted to see where she was. I wanted to prove to myself that there was a normal explanation. But the moment I reached the window and turned on the light, she disappeared. Not walked away, not moved, just gone. I stood there for a while, staring outside. The parking lot was empty. The trees were still. There was nobody anywhere. I checked from another window that had a better view of the area below. Nothing, no person, no movement, nothing at all. Eventually, I convinced myself that I had probably seen a reflection. It was late. I was tired. And sometimes when you stare at a dark window long enough, your brain starts creating shapes where there aren't any. That had to be what happened. At least that's what I told myself. 3 nights later, I saw her again. Same time, same place, same position. She was standing outside facing my window. This time, I didn't turn on the light. I just sat there in my bed and watched her. I don't know why I did that. Maybe I wanted to understand what was happening. Maybe I was trying to convince myself she wasn't real. For about 5 minutes, neither of us moved. She just stood there, completely still. I started wondering if she was actually looking at me, or if she was looking at something inside my room. That thought made me uncomfortable, because if she wasn't looking at me, what exactly was she watching? Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I reached over and closed the curtains. I didn't sleep very well that night. After that, I started closing them every night before going to bed. For about a week, nothing happened. I started thinking maybe it was over. Maybe whatever I had seen was just some strange coincidence. Maybe I had been overthinking everything. Then one night, I woke up because I needed to use the bathroom. My room was completely dark. I was still half asleep, barely aware of what was happening. But then I noticed something. There was a shape near the window, a person standing there. My entire body froze. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My first thought was that someone had gotten inside my apartment. I don't think I've ever been more awake in my life. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and turned on the flashlight. The light hit the window. There was nobody there. My room was empty. The curtains were still closed. I sat there trying to calm myself down. I told myself I had just been dreaming, that I was half asleep, that my brain had created something from fear. But then I noticed something. The curtains were slightly moved. Not open, just slightly disturbed. Slowly, I got out of bed and walked toward the window. I pulled the curtain back, and that's when I saw it. A handprint on the glass. At first, I didn't understand why it bothered me so much. Then I realized the handprint was not on the outside. It was on the inside. Someone had touched my window from inside my apartment. I just stood there staring at it. I didn't touch it. I didn't try to clean it. I didn't even know what I was supposed to do. I remember feeling completely confused because there was no explanation that made sense. I lived alone. My door was locked. My windows were locked. Nobody should have been able to get inside. Eventually, I walked away from the window and went back to bed. I spent the rest of the night awake. I kept telling myself there had to be some explanation. There had to be. I never saw the woman again after that, at least not for a while. A few months passed. Eventually, I decided to move into a different apartment in the same building. The only difference was that this one was on the first floor. I thought maybe that would make me feel better. I thought being lower to the ground would somehow make the whole situation feel less strange. Maybe I would stop thinking about someone standing outside my window. Maybe I would finally forget about the handprint. But moving didn't fix anything. Because a few nights ago, I was sitting on my couch when I noticed something outside my living room window. Someone was standing there. My stomach dropped before I even fully saw her. I already knew it was her. The same woman, the same clothes, the same posture, the same distance from the window. It felt like I had been pulled back into the same nightmare. But this time, something was different. She wasn't looking at me. She wasn't watching my apartment. She was looking upward, toward the second floor, toward my old apartment. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe normally. I just watched her. She stood there for a long time, staring up at my old bedroom window. Then, slowly, she lifted one hand and pointed at my old room. My eyes followed her finger. I looked upstairs. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I noticed a shape behind the glass. Someone was standing there. In my old bedroom. The same window where I used to sleep. The same window where I had seen her standing outside. I couldn't see their face. The distance was too great, but I could tell they were looking down at me, watching me. Then something happened that I still can't explain. The person upstairs slowly raised their hand and waved. Not quickly, not like they were greeting someone. Slowly, almost like they were acknowledging that they knew I was there, that they had been waiting. Emma looked back down at the woman outside my window. She was still pointing upstairs, like she wanted me to see, like she wanted me to understand. And then I realized something that still keeps me awake at night. The woman outside my window was never watching me. She was watching whoever was inside.